what's up, everybody? It's your girl, Erica, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Happy Monday, and thank you for stopping by. I am here to do my weekly review of Married to Medicine. Of course, it's season 12, episode 13, and it was called Couples Therapy and Paradise Problems. Now, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know, please just be patient with me because I have my notes here, but there were a lot of questions asked in this particular episode. So I just want to make sure that I kind of give you all the details of what happened in case you haven't seen it. So I will be kind of looking down and referring to my notes just a little bit because it wasn't necessarily just conversations. It was more like questions. They played a lot of games and a lot of questions were asked. So bear with me, guys, just hanging in with me, but I will get you through it. Let's get started. So it started off as a continuation from last week. Of course, we know that Dr. Eugene has expressed his concern and his frustration about how Toya is being treated over the Met Gala. We already know, heavily exposed that it was said that actually, they did this to set her up because she had not been as cooperative and helpful over the past couple of Met Galas. So basically, she was chosen to kind of get her out there on a limb and set her up and then sort of make her have to do everything by herself and then of course make her pay for what she did to them in the past. But now we see that the ladies are trying to kind of get more involved because it's at the 11th hour and they really need to pull this Met Gala off. So again, like I said, Dr. Eugene, he expressed it to the men about how he felt. He did not necessarily say Heavenly's name, but Dr. Eugene was saying in his confessionals that he feels like Damon is he knows what Dr. Heavenly's doing, but he doesn't see Dr. Damon actually putting Heavenly in her place. So Eugene did express his frustrations about it. King said, hey guys, let's not let the drama with the women pour over into us. And so Curtis kind of took the reins and said, well, look, since we're talking about the Met Gala, Jackie and I were talking, we felt like maybe it would be good for the men to contribute this year. He said, I agreed to do it. Eugene has already agreed to do it. How do you guys feel about that? So Curtis, so like I said, I think Scott was the first one to say his household as a man, he'll definitely contribute. I think all the men sort of followed suit. I think, Cecil said yes. They didn't show Cecil saying yes, but I could tell the way he was talking that he had agreed. I don't even think they showed Damon saying yes, but Damon was saying that he was cool with that. King said that they would contribute. The only person that said that they would not contribute was Steve. Steve made it clear that he would not be contributing or really participating at the Met Gala because he said his wife had told him that she was pretty much left out of the planning and she wasn't being treated fairly as far as the Met Gala goes. She wasn't sort of even part of the group conversations and stuff like that. So he felt like that was wrong. And so he said he would not be participating. Curtis and Cecil said that was cool. You don't even have to really explain. It's all good. But the guys, they just decided to sort of squash it and move on and just, sort of keep the fun moving. They wanted to keep the party train going. They didn't want it to be so heavy and so serious. So, after all of that, it seems like the men already, they agreed to everything. And Dr. Eugene said, well, this was productive. He felt a little bit better about it. So the women, they were chilling, getting foot massages. And they were having like a lot of personal conversation. The men were actually getting massages this time. I think there were some workers, some of the beach workers who were there. The lady said, hey, would you guys like a massage? And of course, the men were all on board. Curtis was like, I'm definitely on board for that. Damon said he wanted a massage. Scott even took off his shirt and said that he had some tension in his shoulders. So the guys were definitely on board with these beautiful women rubbing them down. So that was pretty much it. So they had like a, little chill scene. The guys always pretty much get along. I even think King got a foot massage and all of that. So they get along pretty well. As the ladies were talking, the ladies asked Angel about Bernard. Angel said they're just friends, although, he was invited to a couples trip. He really did not She didn't really expound on it too much. They know that he's there, but like I said, Bernard was just not introduced to this group properly. Although he is Angel's friend, Angel to me has not made a formal introduction. Of course, maybe with the editing and stuff like that, they sort of they didn't show us that part, but to me, it just seems like Bernard is just there. That's the way I see him. He's just there in the mix. He's not really mingling with anyone. He's not really talking to anyone. He's just there. So Quad asked the ladies who has a perfect relationship in the group. Of course, Dr. Heavenly raised her hand without hesitation. And of course, we know that Dr. Heavenly is a liar. There is no perfect marriage, or there's never a perfect marriage or a perfect relationship. Even if your marriage is close to perfect and you guys get along great and you really don't have a lot of issues, it is still not perfect, because guess what? We're not perfect. You know what I'm saying? We mess up every single day. There is something that we could work on every single day. There's something that we could try to get right every single day. So of course, Heavenly, she's making a joke about it, you know, but we're used to Heavenly just trying to make it seem like, you know, her marriage is perfect. And I guess, like you said, if you don't believe it, who else will? So, you know, they kind of just laughed that off. Contessa asked Quad, she said, you know, what are the challenges that you're having in your relationship? Now, remember last week, Tess said that she could see that King and Quad were not at a great place anymore. She said when she met them, they were at a totally different place. Now she can kind of see where, you know, they're having some issues. So Quad basically says that she's kind of pulling back a little bit. She said she was doing all the cooking, doing everything for him, you know, just sort of pushing to make sure that everything was sort of perfect in the relationship. We know, you know how we do that in the very beginning, but Quad actually said that King wanted to get married. She said she turned down his proposal. She said she didn't really want to get married. She said she really thought it was more or less like a joke. She didn't really see that King was really being, I guess, serious about it, or whatever the case may be. So she says ever since then, he has changed. King has said that their relationship has changed ever since they started doing the IVF stuff. But Quad is saying it came from them getting married. So anyway, guys, what do you think? Do you guys think that King actually proposed to Quad and she turned it down? Or do you think that Quad is actually just saying that? Because I would say for myself, in my opinion, I think that King and Quad may have talked about marriage, but I'm not sold on the fact that King actually proposed to Quad and wanted to get married, and she said no, because they couldn't even decide where they were going to live. You remember when, you know, King was saying that they should buy a place together. Quad was saying she didn't want to sell her house, and King was saying that he didn't want to move in with her. So they still weren't on the same page. So for King to just up and propose to her and ask her to marry him, I'm not quite buying that. I like Quad, but Quad does embellish quite a bit, and I think she kind of stretched the truth on that one. So Heavenly asked Quad, well, why are you giving him so much? You know, you're doing all the wifely duties, you're doing all these things as if you're his wife, but you're not his wife. So Quad just basically told her, Heavenly, everybody doesn't want to be married. Everybody's not striving for that. Just because you're in a relationship, everyone's not striving to just get married right away. And that's how you know, Quad sort of ended that. And then Quad started crying. She said, you know, this is the most vulnerable that I've been with you ladies in a very long time. You guys have the most vulnerable me that you've seen. This is me. This is who I am. Quad crying. We have seen Quad cry in the past. I really feel like, you know, there's a thing with me where I see with people crying, they're crying over other things. They're crying and there is something that's bothering them. But what Quad said was just saying that I'm being vulnerable with you ladies. To me, that wasn't a reason to cry. I think that Quad and King were actually in the thick of their issues and sort of like in the place where they were actually getting ready to break up. Probably even, excuse me, just trying to put on a little lip gloss just to give me some color. It looks kind of dark in here. But anyway, so yeah, I'm sorry guys. But anyway, I got a little distracted. But anyway, Quad, I really feel like Quad and King were in the thick of, like I said, breaking up. They were sort of at the end of the road, and I think it was bothering her. She wasn't saying that they were on this vacation with the other couples, but I just don't think that they were at a really, really good place. So Quad's tears, they were real, but I do think that she was actually crying over something else. So the ladies go back to the room, to their rooms. Everybody wants to get cleaned up and ready for dinner. Simone talked to Cecil. She asked Cecil if he had a great time. He said, yeah. He said they had a good time. He says the men always do. He said that the women, he said that the men actually got massages. There were some women there to actually massage them. And so Simone kind of laughed it off. She didn't really care about it. She was like, oh, that's good. And it's not that Simone just doesn't care about Cecil. Simone is very down to earth. Simone is not as territorial or sort of jealous over Cecil. You know, there are some women who are very, very territorial. There are some men like that, but I can speak as a woman. Some women are very territorial. They don't want anyone else to look at their man or say anything to him or ask him a question. And then there are some women who are like pretty cool. As long as you're not being disrespectful or crossing any boundaries and stuff like that, it's cool. I tend to kind of fall in that category. I'm not at a place, we're all human beings. You're not going to go somewhere where, no one's going to say anything at any given point in time to this person. So I do understand that. And like I said, too, they're being filmed. It's not a big deal. Everything's on camera. It's not being hidden. So if the men got a massage, a foot massage, their legs massage, cool. It's on camera. It doesn't even matter. So again, like I said, that was pretty much the end of that. Cecil did ask her, did someone rub on her little booty? And Simone said, oh my God, I wish they would have. So, like I said, it was just a joke. Cecil and Simone tend to go that way a lot. We've seen them do that a lot, even with Simone when Angel had her scrubs revealed. I think Simone, some of the men there, they were kind of built, and Simone was like, oh, let me feel the fabric. And she was sort of joking and sort of rubbing on the men. So Cecil said, okay, well, when Angel comes in, I'm going to do the same thing. So they tend to have that kind of, sort of push and pull. They tend to kind of have the back and forth, and that's cool. That's their relationship. And like I said, a lot of couples are like that. Like I said, I'm cool with, the joking around sometimes. Like I said, as long as it's not disrespectful or you're really, really, sort of trying to hurt your partner's feelings in a sense. So that was okay. So the couples go to dinner. This is their last night in Jamaica. So the couples were actually formally introduced to Bernard for the first time. It seems like just in a group setting. And so as the couples were eating, Toya and Eugene, they're hosting. So they said, well, guys, let's play a game. So they had the men to sit on. I think they were pretty much finished eating by then, but some of them were probably nibbling on some things. And so they asked the men to sit on one side and the women to sit on the other side. So what happened is the men were going to answer the questions. It was about like, Eugene said it was superlatives, but it was like, it was kind of like superlatives. And so the men were asked questions about the women and the women were asked questions about the men. And it was to see like who would get the most votes or get, their name mentioned the most. So some of the questions, I'll let you know what some of the questions were. So the first one, and I'm reading my notes, it says, who's more likely to give unsolicited advice? So they asked the women. They asked the women first. The ladies were first. Who's out of the men, who's more likely to give unsolicited advice? The women said Dr. Eugene. Dr. Eugene, he laughed it off. He didn't really care. He wasn't angry, but he said he really doesn't even talk to a lot of the women a lot of the women. So giving advice to them, he said, oh yeah, okay. I mean, who do I really talk to? Probably other than Simone, maybe Dr. Contessa a little bit, but maybe Brandy, now that Toya and Brandy are becoming cool. But he was just saying he really doesn't do that. But Quad and all the ladies, they raised their card and they said Dr. Eugene. So to the men, the question was, who can turn a disagreement into a full-blown argument? And a lot of the men said they focused on Scott. Scott called Dr. Simone boat. He said whenever a boat is involved, Simone's going to get loud. She's going to yell. She's going to scream. Anything that's very small is taken to the next level. So they agreed that it was Dr. Simone. The next question was, which of the ladies would call out the wrong name during sex? And some of the men said Toya. Everybody agreed. Even some of the women were saying that Toya would do that. And so the last question that they asked was, and we know how Toya is, but like Dr. Eugene said, now Dr. Eugene says that Toya tries to put on like she's this super sexual person, but she's really not. And I can kind of believe Dr. Eugene. People look at the way it's almost like, and I want to explain this right. They look at Toya like Toya is this beautiful woman, and she has this sort of dumpy husband in a way, and maybe it's kind of like, oh, she's putting it on him and stuff like that. But me personally, I don't have anything to do with their bedroom. I don't care what a man and what a husband and wife do, but I tend to kind of believe Eugene. I believe that Toya sort of can make it appear that way, and she can say certain things. Maybe Toya's had her experience back in her day, but is Toya really just, can Toya teach a lesson in the class about what to do? I don't think she can. But anyway, they said that she would be the one to call someone else's name. The last question was, who of the women would have a secret life that no one knows about? And they all said Jackie, Dr. Jackie. And we know that because Jackie is always as quiet as a church mouse. If you're not talking about something, dealing with the medical field, Dr. Jackie really doesn't contribute a lot to the conversation. I've heard Jackie say the most when it comes to something, like I said, like your physical health, something medical, or maybe sometimes fashion. She doesn't talk about her personal life. She doesn't talk about sex. She doesn't really talk about family too much. Mainly, like I said, it's basically, like I said, medicine and fashion for Dr. Jackie, and that's it. So she would probably be the one to have, hold on just a second, someone's at my door. All right, sorry about that, you guys. I can just continue on. Someone was at my door, but anyway, that was pretty much, like I said, the gist of that game. Like I said, Dr. Jackie was the one who they said would have a secret life. Dr. Eugene said that, okay, for the men, he said that they were going to have a counselor. There was someone from Jamaica. He was going to sort of counsel the men, because normally it's the women, or normally they do it as couples. But Eugene said maybe there are some things that the guys want to talk about, and so he had someone for them, and then the ladies sort of went on their own and just kind of talked to each other. So Simone whispered to King. She said, let go of the chauvinistic ways. And King was like, well, I'm not a chauvinist. And so Simone said, no, you need to do that. And number one, they just said Simone loves to give unsolicited. Well, she wasn't the one who said that she would give unsolicited advice, but I think Simone did that because she was kind of, in her own way, taking up for Quad. She probably listens to things that King says, but she was also taking up for Quad because of some of the things that Quad was saying while they were at the river. So that was sort of Simone's way of kind of looking out for Quad and telling King, kind of let that wall down and stop being so chauvinistic. So Heavenly asked the ladies, have they ever looked at their husbands and wanted to slap him? And they all laughed about it. It was just, this was really a good conversation between the women because it did not lead to an argument. Toya asked them if there was one thing that they could fix in their relationship, and it would make everything good, what would it be? And I thought that was a good question. Simone said that she's actually very hard on Cecil. She says that she knows that she's been very unhappy and she's talked to Cecil a lot. But she says that she is very hard on Cecil. She says Cecil does try to give in some ways. Toya asked Simone how could they support her, and Simone said just don't be as hard on her. She said, because on the flip side, Cecil can be very stubborn. And she said that although she yells, she says she doesn't do that every single time. She does know how to talk to Cecil. She does use a softer tone in many, many instances, in many situations. Many, many times she's tried to talk to Cecil and be extremely nice, and he was still being stubborn. And Simone was being very vulnerable. That's what I wrote in my note. I said, I think that she shares a lot about her and Cecil, and I like that about Simone. And I think Simone was telling the truth. I don't think that Simone is going through the house yelling and screaming all day and all night. I do believe that Simone does try to talk to Cecil, but we know oftentimes when you don't get results, then it requires you to sort of take it up a notch. And I think that's what Simone has done over the years. She's gotten so frustrated to now she's at the boiling point and she's at the breaking point. And so every time that we see her, she's yelling and screaming. And also it's just part of like the character that they have created for Simone on the show, that Dr. Simone is the loud one who's always yelling and screaming. But I do believe that Simone definitely has a softer side. If you kind of can see through people, you kind of discern a little bit, you can tell Simone is not this hard-nosed. Simone tries to come across as if, she's hard, or, she's kind of that way. But Simone is a huge softie. If you probably tap Simone, she'll probably cry at the drop of a dime. So I do believe Simone, and I do believe that Simone is being very, very vulnerable and telling the truth about her marriage with Cecil. Cecil said that he's been happy for 29 years. They've had their issues and stuff like that, but in other words, he's cool with how it is. He said, give me all my years. He always says that all the time. And Eugene said that he feels like he's been with Toya for 17 years. He said that he's built to deal with Toya. He said that no one else, he said he tells her all the time that no one else would actually deal with her. And that's actually probably true. No one else would probably put up with Toya the way she is. Like I said, Toya is a very pretty lady, a very beautiful woman, but beauty means nothing to a man when they feel disrespected. So Dr. Eugene is right. He is the one that can deal with her. Mimi talked about her son and his special needs. She said that little Stevie has autism. She said that it's been very hard and she worries about him all the time. She said she worries about his safety, and she says she wants to protect him at all costs because of him being a Black little boy with autism and having special needs. She worries about how people will treat him and the fact that they won't understand what he's really dealing with. And that was very touching. That's the part of Mimi that I do like. Mimi has been very vulnerable and very open about what she's going through as a mom, being a mom with a child with special needs, and it's good. I would rather see that side of Mimi. Not that Mimi has to tell like a sad story all the time, but I just think that Mimi being vulnerable and not necessarily jumping in the middle of the fights, I think that that's better when you're being introduced to a group, that you share more of yourself rather than to take sides. So that was really good of Mimi, and I think the ladies really took to her and they felt what she was saying as a woman and as mothers. I laughed because, and I even have it in my notes, I said LOL, Curtis is so uninterested. When the counselor was talking, Curtis was like, he was just sitting there and he was so uninterested. Curtis, a lot of those guys, and Scott definitely is like a caveman. He doesn't want to do counseling at all. Damon said that he's going through it. He said that no marriage is perfect. He and Heavenly have had their problems. Damon said that he misses his son. We all know that Damon's son, their son, has sort of kind of moved on from the family. He and Heavenly had some sort of argument and he left and they have not seen him. Damon is definitely feeling the effects of that. And I've always said, if you watch my videos or you've been following me for some time, I've been saying that Dr. Damon is ready to explode and we can see it on him. He's like a ticking time bomb. And at some point, if he doesn't really talk about it or let it out, he will explode and it may even be on the wrong person. Simone talked about Heavenly and Simone, Dr. Heavenly and Simone, Dr. Simone, they were talking about how they worry about their children, even having grown children. Simone says sometimes she stays up at night worrying about Michael, praying that he hasn't been in an accident, that he's driving okay, that he's not doing certain things. Heavenly says she does the same thing. Angel was like, as a mom, all moms worry, but I think at some point you have to sort of give it over to God. Simone said she's constantly praying. She said, but it's sort of wearing her down to worry about the boys. So she's saying now she has to kind of give it up a little bit. And so when Angel said that, Heavenly said, well, you don't understand, you don't understand, you don't understand. And Angel's children, I think, like, are about maybe like 12 and 9, or maybe 8 and 11. So she will get to that point. I don't think that she meant any harm by what she was saying, but she was just sort of saying that you have to put your faith and trust in God and just pray for the best. Curtis said that he wanted to hear from King because King doesn't really talk a lot. So Cecil did ask him. They started talking to King about he and Quad. What's up with he and Quad? And Cecil asked, hey, has Quad been kind of asking him about getting married? So King said, actually, he said that the men are more interested of when he and Quad are getting married over her. They seem to be more interested in pressuring him about that. So Curtis said that, King kind of shared what's going on with them with the IVF stuff. Curtis said that maybe things aren't going well because they're playing house. Curtis said that they're not doing things the biblical way, which is for them to be married. They're pretending and playing to be married and playing house, but they're not married. All the guys did not agree with what Curtis was saying. They felt like he was being super judgmental. They really didn't like it. They all said in their confessionals that Curtis was sort of out of order. Even Scott said, he's too young to have dementia, but if you're saying something like that, something's definitely wrong. Steve said he didn't want Curtis to go down that road. He needed to pull it back. King said, okay, we're not going to weaponize the Bible against me. And King even asked him, hey, have you done everything right? And Curtis said no. I think King is aware of what Curtis has done in the past, and all of the other guys are as well. So Dr. Damon tried to clean it up and say, look, there's no judgment here. You don't have to worry about that from me, because I am not here to judge you. What you do and what works for you is for you. And I think that's kind of like the approach that Curtis should have taken, but Curtis didn't even back down. Curtis said, well, I know exactly what I'm saying. I feel the way I feel. What are you going to do about it? I'm not going to change my mind. Like I said, luckily the men, they don't actually get as angry as the women or sort of go off on each other as the women do. Curtis just said it's just out of order. Everything that King and Quad are doing is out of order. King said Curtis is actually going against both Quad and his wife, but he said because his wife is a part of their IVF journey. So if he feels like it's so wrong in the eyes of God and stuff like that, then he should also be angry with his wife and talking to his wife about it. So that was pretty much it. The guys shut it down. They, as always, like I said, they don't get into it as much as everybody else. Dr. Eugene talked to Dr. Damon about it. He was finally honest. He said that he and Damon are very similar. Dr. Eugene has the utmost respect for Dr. Damon because Dr. Damon gave him his job at the very beginning when Dr. Eugene moved to Atlanta. So he said, we're very similar. We don't say a whole lot. He said, I'm a little more vocal than you, but I tend to handle things the way you do. He said that, he said, I am a little upset about how Heavenly's been talking to Toya, and it has bothered me. Damon said, basically, I understand where you're coming from. I respect that. Just don't say anything about my son or about my family. So Dr. Eugene said, no, I would never do that. I would never say anything about your son. I haven't said anything, and I would never do that. And Dr. Eugene was telling the truth. Nobody on this show has said anything about Heavenly's son or that situation, even when they could have, even when they were well within their right to sort of go at Heavenly about it. Not so much Damon, because Damon doesn't say anything, but even when Heavenly has commented on other people's families, particularly Simone and Cecil, they both said that they will not go there and say anything about they said they won't go there and talk about Damon Jr. at all. And they all have kept that promise to the Kimes family, and they've done a great job at it. And there's kind of like a blessing in there for all of them, because sometimes, like they said, when they go low, we go high. And some people say, well, when they go low, we're going lower. But the thing about it is sometimes you don't realize how things will come back. So with that being said, they all have respected the fact as parents that we will not say anything to them. They value their friendship. As a matter of fact, everybody else in that group values Heavenly and Damon more than Damon and Heavenly value them, because they could have really gone there, and they have not done that. So Dr. Eugene told, Damon, hey, I love you, man. I don't ever want anything to bother our friendship in any way, but I just had to tell you. And Damon said he understood, and he said that he would try to just kind of deal with Heavenly on his own. And even King kind of felt it, and he gave Dr. Eugene a hug, and they said, I love you, and it went on from there. So like I said, the men were good. The women were good. And so the women said, well, guys, you should be proud of us, because we had our own conversation and we didn't get into it. And that was like, that was like a great moment, because we know that anytime that these women talk, it can go left, but it just shows that they can get along. So the Jamaica trip is finally over. Like I said, King asked Dr. Eugene for a hug, and that was sort of the end of their scene or their cash trip in Jamaica. So everyone is back at home. We saw the little montages. One of the scenes that was really cute. Well, Toya gave her children money for Ashton is a 4.0 student. I think Avery was like 3.65, 3.75. So Ashton got a little more money. So she asked them what would they want to do with the money. I think Avery was going to kind of hold on to his money. Ashton said that he was going to splurge because he had earned it. And I thought that was really, really cute. Quad and King had what seems to be their final conversation on this show. They talked about everything. Quad, it started, they were at Quad's house. Quad said that Dr. Jackie had been texting her nonstop because of what Curtis said. So I guess Jackie wanted to make sure that Quad was okay. King, like I said, King said that Curtis was sort of speaking against Jackie and what she was doing, because she was actually her doctor in the States and helping out. He said that King finally said they were talking about marriage and stuff like that, and King said marriage isn't always necessary. So that's what I'm saying. Did he really propose to Quad, or did he switch after Quad sort of turned him down? Because he said marriage isn't necessary. He said you don't need, King also said that you don't consider me or appreciate me. And Quad said, of course I do. Quad said, I shouted from the rooftop all the time about how much I need you, how much I appreciate you, all those things. King says, well, showing me and acting that way and then showing me is something different. So King and Quad definitely are not on the same page. King feels like Quad just is using him for this IVF stuff. That's basically what he's saying. King said he didn't like how she acted when they went to Ghana. He said she sort of turned on him and she acted as if he was the enemy. King said that Quad was ungrateful. And during these scenes, Quad is very sharp at the tongue. She's very quick-witted. She can sort of come back at you. If you try to drag Quad, like she said, I'm ready for the dragon right now. Quad is always ready and has something to say. But with King, you can see her withdrawing a little bit and then thinking about what she really, really, really wants to say. And I think that's because she does care about King. I see a different side of Quad with King than I did with Dr. G. Quad did that a little bit. A couple of times Dr. G went off on Quad and I saw her kind of withdraw back a little bit, but you don't see that too much with Quad. Normally Quad will say what she has to say. And then Quad did tell King that, sometimes, men can get a little sassy. You're trying to explain something to them and then they keep coming back. So King said, okay, fine, I won't say anything. And that was it. That was pretty much the end of their conversation. King and Quad are no longer together. We know that. You can see the tension in their confessionals. You can see the tension when they film scenes together. They're definitely not on one accord or on the same page. As a matter of fact, the relationship was probably over almost coming into this season altogether. Maybe Quad just asked King, hey, let's just finish out this season, and that'll be that. So again, that was the end of the episode, guys. The season finale is next week. I heard that they only have 2 parts to their reunion, so they wrapped up this particular season pretty quickly. What do you guys think of this episode? I thought it was a very good episode. This was probably my favorite episode of their Jamaica trip, or of their couples trip. I did enjoy season 11. For me, season 12. Season 10 and 11 weren't that great to me, but season 12 sort of got back to somewhat of the old Married to Medicine, and I really enjoyed it. So let me know what you guys think. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. And like I said, please share the video. There are some people who don't really have the time to watch Married to Medicine, or they don't sort of have maybe like the Peacock or Bravo app to actually watch it, so they kind of catch clips here and there. Please share their video, my video with them, because I try to give as much detail as possible. And I would really appreciate that. If you want to leave me a comment, please, if you just want to say hello, or you just want to comment, or anything that I said, maybe something you agree with or disagree with, let me know, shout me out, and I will definitely respond to you. So let me know, guys. We're at the end of this season. Let me know what you thought about the couples trip altogether. Was it a success, or was it a failure with Dr. Eugene and Toya? I'm saying Dr. Toya. Toya and Dr. Eugene at the helm. Was the trip a success? How do you feel about what Curtis said? Do you feel like Curtis was out of order, or do you feel like Curtis was right in what he said to King? Let me know how you felt about, just Mimi sharing her story about little Stevie and having a child with special needs. Let me know, and I will see you guys soon. Like I said, I am reviewing Love and Marriage Huntsville, so if you watch that, or if you just want to check out my video, check it out, guys, and I will see you on the next go round. Be safe, have a great week, and I will see you soon. Bye.